Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Marshburn.
Present.
Councilmember Behringer. Here. Councilmember Singleton.
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
And Councilmember Vance.
Here.
Y'all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Maybe see. Now I would ask you to join me in prayer. Father God, we thank you for all that you give us and all the good you bestow upon us. We thank you for the blessings that we have. Father, we thank you that we live in a free country, and we'll be honoring this free country this week. We pray that you'll be with us tonight as we work for the citizens of Garner, making the right decisions. For us in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Petitions and comments. It's time on the agenda to address the board on an item that is not on the agenda. Hearing none, I'll go to the adoption of the agenda.
Mayor, I have a couple of items to add. I want to add the Garner Economic Development Corporation presentation, and we'll call on Mayor Pro Tem Marshburn for that. And then under new old business, I want to add a discussion about the rec center field and landscaping of One Hill area.
Okay, the one for Ken and the GED, you're going to do that first on the end of agenda now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and approve the
Yeah,
agenda.
let's go ahead and do
I
that.
move with those amendments or additions added that we approve the agenda as presented in our packet.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
You can do it.
Okay, I think I'll go down to the podium. I'm going to ask Councilmember Elmo Vance to join me. Mr. Mayor and fellow council members and members of the audience, it's my privilege, my happy privilege this evening to recognize Councilmember Elmo Vance, not for his service on the council, but for his service with the Garner Economic Development Corporation. I won't try to give you the history of that, but many of you will probably recall that after we had the tragedy occur at the ConAgra plant and ConAgra decided to move out of our area, they bequeathed that property and the building there to us, and so the town established something called a Garner Economic Development Corporation, and the initial board of directors was a 3-member board of directors, one of whom was Mr. Elmo Vance, and I had the privilege of serving with him on that, and Mr. Bruce Andrews was our long-term chair. Just recently, because of his election or selection as a council member, and since the council had only one liaison to the GDC, Mr. Vance graciously decided to step aside. So at our meeting recently, we recognized Mr. Bruce Andrews, who's also stepped off of that board of directors. But this evening, I'd like to present to Mr. Vance a nice token of our appreciation. This says, in recognition and sincere appreciation of many years of distinguished service as secretary of our organization, and this is presented by the Garner Economic Development Corporation the year of 2019. And I might just say on a personal note, we've come to know each other pretty well through this process. I told Bruce he seemed like a brother to me, and Elmo's my younger brother, I think. So would you join me in congratulating him for his very able service to this good organization?
Thank you very much, Councilman Marshburn, and to Bruce Andrews and all the other fellow brothers who were a part, and sisters who were a part of this this journey, which it was one which we had ups and downs, but we weathered the storm, and we have been tremendously, I won't say lucky, but blessed to land a organization, Amazon, to come in and to purchase the property, and we all see the results of it. But I also like to recognize Mr. Joseph Stallings for his tremendous and professional work, and without him, making that coordination liaison with the various entities, I can say with confidence that this would not come to fruition. So, Mr. Stallings, thank you so much for your help, and also for the council at the time for having confidence in me to be a part of this very important endeavor. Again, thank you all, and I humbly accept this token of appreciation.
Thank you, Elmo. Careful with these chairs these days. Okay, there's 7 items on the consent agenda. Does any council member wish to pull any for separate discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Public hearings, CUD 1903 and SP 1903. David Bamford. I'll file it.
Yeah, do we have a petitions?
Yeah, we did. We're public hearing, the first public hearing.
All right, we're on the first public hearings, ladies and gentlemen.
Bill, let me
The
open the public hearing before you go.
yeah,
Okay, the public hearing open. Go ahead.
public hearings now open in the case of CUDZ 19-04, which is a zoning case, and CUP-SP 1904, which is a permit application case. This is Pullen Construction, with a request by Tony Tate Landscape Architecture Associates to rezone 3.63 acres. It's located at 255 Bricksteel Lane in White Oak Business Park. As town attorney, it's my duty to make a few preliminary comments. Some of you that attend these council meetings have heard these before, but those of you who may not have, I need to tell you that there are some rules that apply to this kind of case that are a little bit different from what we have in a normal public hearing. These cases are, the permit case is what's known as a quasi-judicial case, which means that it's sort of like a court proceeding to the extent that we have certain formalities that have to be followed. In the regular zoning case, those formalities don't exist, and in the zoning part of this proceeding, which will be called first, people or anyone who has an interest in it may speak and offer their opinions, their comments. In the part of this case, which is the permit case, that's where the quasi-judicial rules apply, and in that case, the testimony it must be given to be admissible. It must be given by people who are sworn witnesses who have some demonstrated expertise in some subject related to the development process. And furthermore, they must be sworn, as I said, sworn testimony. And we'll try to work our way through those two processes in the overall framework of one public hearing, and I'll just sort of kind of help you talk you through that as we get there. If you have any questions, when we get to the quasi-judicial part of it, it's possible for members of the public to ask some questions that we'll get someone to try to answer from the witness stand. Basically, there are a couple things that we have to do before we proceed. One of those is the law requires that there be an inquiry as to whether any members of the council have formed any biases or opinions regarding the subject matter of this case, which cannot be altered by hearing of evidence, and I'll first inquire of the council if anyone has any biases or prejudices in favor or against this permit application. If no one does, the next question to be asked of the council is simply whether there have been what the law calls ex parte communications, which means that someone for or against this permit application has spoken with or communicated with the council member prior to the hearing. If so, that needs to be disclosed. I'll ask if anyone has any ex parte communications to disclose. If there are none, as soon as the technology is appropriate, we'll be ready to proceed.
You can go ahead and call them in.
Yeah, would
We may not get
the people who want to be sworn as witnesses in the permit case, please come forward and be sworn. Clerk will administer the oath. First thing we'll do in the case is to have a staff presentation by Mr. David Bamford, Planning Services Manager from the Planning Department.
All set.
If there's a little problem with the technical stuff,
Yeah, they can see it, yeah, but the audience can see it. Yeah, it's probably related to the power outage, but we're just gonna have to kind of go with it the way it is until we can figure it out, but, there's not a whole lot. Yeah, so,
hey, David, proceed.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. This is a conditional use application. It has a rezoning and a site plan. This site is located at 255 Bricksteel Lane in White Oak Business Park East. The site's approximately 3.6 acres in size. The applicant is Pullen Properties LLC. The Planning Commission did review this application at their meeting on June the 17th and did recommend approval. This is a picture of the project site. This picture is looking east on Bricksteel Lane, and this site is directly past rush hour on the left side of the road. This is an aerial photograph of the business park. The project site is highlighted in blue here. This is a vacant tract, and there are other developments in this business park, mostly office, warehouse, and flex space. This property has split zoning, and this was a result of property lines changing over time. When property lines change, the zoning boundaries do not change, and I believe that this portion of the site was the result of an old property line. The western portion is zone MXD C25, or Conditional Use District 25, and the eastern portion shown in gray is Industrial 2, Conditional Use District 157. The business park is primarily zoned Mixed Use District C25 with some tracts zone I2 conditional use along the north part of Spaceway Court, wrapping around to the south and then going to the east along the north portion of Bricksteel Lane. This shows the rezoning cases in this area of Garner. The oldest case we have on file is from 1988. This is when this area came into our jurisdiction. And the business park was rezoned in 1988 from Wake County R30 into Town of Garner MXD1. The most recent case we have on file is from 2008, and this was some rezonings along Bricksteel Lane along the northern portion of this road from MXD1 C25 to I2, C157. So the existing zoning, a portion is zone MXD1, C25, and the eastern portion is I2, C157. The main difference between these two districts is that the western portion, zone MXD, C25, allows outdoor operations for industrial, light industrial, flex space. The eastern portion, that zone I2, C157, only allows outdoor storage for retail sales uses. It does allow indoor operations for light industrial and commercial uses. So when staff reviewed this application, we recommended a rezoning with this request as a housekeeping matter to clean up the split zoning so the entire site has the same zoning, in that there's no line that separates, a portion has to be or could be retail sales, outdoor storage versus outdoor storage for a light industrial use. The requested zoning is industrial 2, conditional use district C 217 for the entire site. The existing I2 conditions from the C157 will be carried over, and the only net new uses that would be permissible are the ones highlighted in green. So under the current zoning of the I2, it would be sales-oriented use with outdoor operations. The applicant is asking to include outdoor storage for flex space uses and outdoor operations for any industrial use, or outdoor storage, indoor or outdoor. So the uses highlighted in green would be the new net uses that would be permissible on the site. The applicant is also listing, has submitted some additional conditions that would apply to the site, and these have been carried over from the industrial to C157. This is the existing conditions that's on the eastern portion of the site. These have been carried over. The first use has to do with screening and buffering next to Camelot. The second condition has to do with trees and plantings, and the third condition has to do with any outdoor storage has to be 100% screened from any street views and located in the rear or side of the building. The 2018 Garner Ford plan designates White Oak Business Park East and West as light industrial center, and this requested zoning would fall within the recommendations of that plan. The light industrial center on the Garner Comprehensive Plan, uses that would be in harmony with the plan would include office, warehouse, flex space with outdoor storage, if outdoor storage is screened. We do have a principle in the Garner Ford plan that we believe that this project and rezoning would be in harmony of, and that is to support an increase in office needs. This site would have, I believe, office and warehouse on it. And I will stop there. I'll be happy to answer any questions on the zoning portion of this case, and Allison Jones will pick up and give a presentation to go over the details of the proposed site plan.
Okay, anyone on this portion?
The outdoor storage that you're recommending be allowed, I was listening to see how the adjacent properties are zoned and if outdoor storage is allowed on them. So could you tell us what's in the surrounding area?
Sure. So on this map shows the project site outlined in orange. The the light orangey tannish color are the areas of the business park zone, mixed use, conditional use district 25, MXD C25. I don't have the map zoomed all the way out, but the MXD1 portion goes along the entire southern portion of Bricksteel Lane all the way down to the end. Outdoor storage is permissible in MXD1 without really any restrictions. It would be allowed for light industrial, retail sales, office, warehouse, and flex space under the MXD C25. In the area zone I2 C157, all outdoor storage is restricted with the exception of it is permissible for a use that has retail sales. So
Is
outdoor
that what's
storage,
applicable to this application? Or do we know yet?
this site will not have any, as proposed, is not going to have any on-site retail sales. They will have office, warehouse type use with an outdoor area that could have some minor outdoor storage, and they can talk more about that. I mean, the proposal under this site plan is to have a full yard of outdoor storage, but there may be some.
And how about the lot, the zoning immediately east of the site? Is that the same thing as the gray portion of the?
Correct. So if the use has retail sales, outdoor storage is permissible. But that district also allows indoor flex space, indoor light industrial, indoor manufacturing.
Back to the beginning, this outdoor storage will be allowed if, the only condition, if it's involved as retail sales.
So on the project site, on the western portion, outdoor storage is not restricted. Yeah.
I'm talking about under the proposed.
Proposed. So under the proposed, outdoor storage would be permissible for flex space uses, which is not permissible on the eastern portion of the site now. Outdoor storage would be permissible for industrial uses. Manufacturing would not be a use where outdoor storage would be permissible. Not manufacturing, only if it was a contractor that had some outdoor equipment, that falls under industrial in our use table.
Only place that that screening is required is along the back property line next to Camelot.
A 65-foot buffer screen is required along the boundary with Camelot.
That's the only place that the berm and the screening is proposed.
Right, and this is a condition that is in place now. This is just being carried over to the new district. So right now, that 65-foot buffer is in place now on the eastern portion of the site, because the site's got split zone. So
that, what's existing, I'm really concentrating on what's proposed. The main line, I'm not necessarily against it, just trying to clarify if there's going to be equipment, since it's some agreement on the screening and the consistency of the storage and the retail business, all of those things that are mixed up with the folks next to them, and I think I probably got a little bit better understanding. So you've answered my questions. I appreciate it, David.
Okay.
David, point out where, you see, I was out there recently, the Stanley Steamer right across the street, is it? So it would be there to the south, right, of this?
Right, so on that portion of the zoning, outdoor storage is not restricted.
Okay, any other council member?
Outdoor storage is allowed in most all these industrial, commercial lots we've approved over the years down in that area. That's the easy way of putting it, right? Most all of them allow outside storage. This is no different.
Yeah, Bill, do we go to the audience now?
Anyone from the applicant wish to be heard on the zoning part of this case? We'll get around to the site plan after we hear from the public on the zoning. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Tony Tate. My address is 5011 South Park Drive, Suite 200 in Durham. I have with me tonight the potential and property owner and taxpayer for this particular parcel, and we also have Rick Baker, who is with Timmons Engineering. But as in response to the zoning conditions, and I think most of you were on this board back when White Oak Business Park rezoned those parcels. It was the parcels that were undeveloped at the time that abutted the Camelot subdivision were rezoned, and additional screening measures were given that were much higher than what was previously done out there. We've got a 50-foot undisturbed buffer now along that edge with the rezoning, and then a 15-foot planted buffer. So it's a really dense buffer that was part of the zoning conditions that we're adopting for this particular lot that goes all along the boundaries with Camelot, which was an upgrade to what it was when the MX D1 zoning classification was there. So it's a much higher screening than was there originally, so we're just folding that into this petition. And as far as the other outdoor equipment or outdoor storage, that falls underneath the site plan, and you do have requirements for screening of outdoor storage. So it's not a zoning condition, but the other screening of that will be handled under the UDO requirements.
Questions for Tony?
Thank you, Tony.
Any member of the public wish to be heard on the zoning portion of this? Now hear the staff presentation on the permit application.
Good evening. I'm Allison Jones. I'm going to talk about the site plan portion of this project. As David mentioned, it's 3.6 acres and it's going to be used for light industrial flexible space. Landscaping, going back to what you're talking about as far as the buffering for Camelot subdivision. The tree coverage requirements is 10%, and that's being met by additional plantings along with existing plantings. The buffers are in compliance with the UDO as follows. Brick Steel Lane is a street yard buffer. The northern perimeter is 7.5 foot wide. There's a reduction of 50% in that buffer because of the existing plantings on the neighboring parcel and the plantings that are there on the parcel that's under that we're talking about today. The eastern perimeter buffer is undisturbed, which is 35 feet wide, and the western buffer, again, is 7.5 feet wide due to the allowance of the reduction. The inspections department, along with the fire department, have reviewed the project as proposed and have approved it. This site does not contain any FEMA floodplain, environmental sensitive areas, and it's mostly flat. This particular project is within White Oak Business Park East. That is not located within the watershed protection area. This project is subject to water quality requirements for nitrogen only. So payment will be received from the developer prior to any permits being issued. Infrastructure, water and sewer. The site will be served by the City of Raleigh water and sewer infrastructure. They're going to be connecting to an existing 8-inch water line and 8-inch sewer line. Excuse me. Brick Steel Lane currently has curb and gutter. Sidewalks along the site's frontage will be provided under this plan, and access to the site will be off Brick Steel Lane. A traffic impact analysis was not required for this, this project. This is the site plan. I'm going to point out to you the area in which the buffer we're talking about is for Camelot. Right up in this area where my cursor is, it's just a little bit of this project contains that 65-foot buffer for Camelot. But as Tony mentioned, and as the plans show you, that area will maintain the 65-foot undisturbed buffer, along with this area right here that has a City of Raleigh easement to as well. So there should be fairly good screening in this area for the neighbors for Camelot. The lighting has been approved per the current UDO, with site lighting as well as wall packs being provided. The Garner 2018 Transportation Plan does not have any recommendations for Brick Steel Lane. It is a 2-lane facility with curb and gutter and built to local town street standards, and apart from the sidewalks that are being added for this plan. The Garner Parks and Recreation Plan does not have any recommendations for this area, therefore is considered to be consistent with the Parks and Recreation Open Space and Greensway Master Plan. After review of this plan, the staff finds that the project now as proposed conforms to the regulations of the Unified Development Ordinance, so long as the site specific conditions are met. In the following conditions, prior to the receipt of approved plans, the engineering department must receive the fees paid to the town of Garner. Prior to the issuance of the first building permit, all water and sewer fees must be paid to the City of Raleigh. And prior to the issuance of the first building permit, the stormwater manager must receive the must see proof of payment for the nitrogen offset payment as approved for the mitigation bank. The Planning Commission reviewed the request on their June 17, 2019 meeting. With an unanimous vote, the Planning Commission confirmed staff's findings in Section 7 of the report. CUP SP 1904, pooling construction, is in conformity with the adopted town plans and policies, and further accepts staff's statements regarding zoning consistency with the Garner Ford Comprehensive Plan, detailed in Section 5 of this report as their own, and recommended approval of CUDZ 1904 and CUSP 1904 to the Town Council. Any questions for me?
What's going in?
The applicant is here, but I do believe that right now the applicant is an existing construction company, and he just wants to have more space for his expanding business. So, I'm not speaking for the applicant, but from what I have been told or heard in talks with the applicant, it won't be a storage yard where they have constantly have equipment stored, but I believe when they're transitioning to the next project, they probably have to store something until the next project is available. But again, I'm not speaking for the applicant.
The applicant may have some witnesses that want to be heard in connection with the site plan.
Get in, Mr.
Welcome
Mayor.
back.
I need to give a name and address again for the record. Tony Tate, 5011 South Park Drive, Suite 200, Durham. The application here is for a building contractor. Mr. Pullen is a building contractor, and he currently has a business here in Garner. It's a small site that he has. He's looking to expand. White Oak is a perfect place for what he wants to do. It's quickly filling up out there, and he's proposing a 15,000 square foot building. It comes with all of the required landscaping that screens the fenced area that there is. He doesn't do a lot of outdoor storage, but he'll have a piece of equipment that's moving from job site to job site or comes in. It's not a storage type of business. He's a contractor that has that kind of equipment. He's building a great looking building. It's a full brick facade on the front and turn the corner down, I think 25 feet on each side. It's a really nice looking building. And he's happy to be staying here in Garner. So
We're happy to have him.
if you got any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Always curious. It's not a requirement to know, but if people can tell us, it's just always like to know. And we have no guess otherwise, so we're not into his business. We're curiosity.
White Oak is becoming a hot commodity. There's not many places like that left, and so looking to expand out there.
The applicant have any other witnesses, or is that it?
We have other witnesses if you have questions. If not, we're happy
Do
to.
they want to talk to the podium?
Someone speak? He's ready to go to work.
Time to close the hearing then.
Okay, we are ready to close the hearing. Call for one motion.
Mayor, I move that the county council accept the staff's statements regarding the zoning consistency with the Garner Forward Comprehensive Plan detailed in Section 5 of the staff report as our own, and therefore I move further that the town council adopt ordinance 2019-3983 approving rezoning request CUDZ 1904 as it is reasonable and in the public interest because it will likely be compatible with the surrounding zoning, provide adequate buffering to adjoining residential uses per the conditions, and will allow development that is compatible with the existing uses in the White Oak Business Park East.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
And the CUP permit, Mr. Mayor, I move the council accept the staff statements regarding the plan consistency in Section 7 of this report as our own and find the application meets the 10 permit criteria in Section 3.14.d. Therefore, approve CUP SP 1904 pooling construction with the 3 standard conditions and the 3 site-specific conditions to be listed on the permit that will be prepared by the staff.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Next matter for hearing is CCAC Building Solutions Special Use Site Plan SUP SP 1902. And basically, ladies and gentlemen, the comments that I made in connection with the conditional use permit application in the last case are applicable here. The special use site plan is very similar to the conditional use permit. In this particular case, however, the property's already been rezoned and we don't have to go through the rezoning part. So we will begin with asking those who want to testify, in this case, who were not sworn previously, to come forward and be sworn, please.
I'm up, well, here.
Hear from the applicant.
Yeah, but
You already been sworn, Wes? It's a twofer. Okay, good. Okay, well, the question we'll ask the council in this case, just as a previous one, are there any biases or prejudices you have in connection with this case, or have there been any ex parte communications you need to disclose?
Council have any?
If there have been none, we're ready to call on Ms. Jones, present the staff's presentation.
Okay. Well, I'm here again to present CCAC Building Solutions, SUP SP 1902. The owner and applicant is CCAC Investment Properties. It's located at 200 Waterfield Drive, and the tract size is 5.78 acres. We met with the Planning Commission on June 17th, and they recommended you all hear this presentation tonight. Okay, excuse me. Zoning and land use. The requested Specific use is for, flex space as a part of the larger use category of light industrial service. It's currently zoned MXD1. It permits office and warehouse without, outdoor storage. With that being said, outdoor storage does have some certain screening requirements with fencing and landscaping, to be exact. Zoning and land use. The property is surrounded by MXD zoning on all sides. There is one residential use to the east of the property, but it's still zone MXD1. As I mentioned, the acreage of the project is 5.78 acres. The building size will be 15,000 square feet in the light industrial flex office warehouse. This is the site. You can access the site off of Waterfield Drive. Site plan was reviewed for architectural and building materials, landscape, buffering, utilities, parking. Excuse me. Lighting and other applicable town policies and plans. The building materials will be constructed out of brick and split-face concrete block with metal sidings, and the doors will have a canopy over the entrance of the building. Landscape buffer requirements will be met with existing landscaping and new plant material. There's 1 street buffer and 3 perimeter buffers. The street buffer, of course, is along Waterfield Drive, and it will be met by adding new plant material. The perimeter buffer will be met by adding new plant material along with existing plant material. And for the vehicle service area, canopy trees and shrubs will be used in the planted islands. There's no FEMA floodplain on this area. However, this parcel is subject to Neuse River riparian buffer rules. There's no proposed land disturbance in any of the environmental sensitive areas. CCAC, commercial development within the Greenfield South, is not located within the watershed protection area. However, it is subject to nitrogen and water quality requirements for 1, 10, and 25-year storms. The developed plan will remain under the 10 pounds per acre threshold for nitrogen loading rate, which will not trigger a stormwater control measure for treatment of nitrogen, but the site still will implement a dry detention pond to treat stormwater quality for 1, 10, and 25-year storms. A payment will be required for this site. Excuse me. Water and sewer. Water and sewer lines are adjacent to this property, and they will be tied into the existing water and sewer lines. The inspection department, along with the fire department, have reviewed the plan as proposed and have approved it. Parking is based on 1 space per every 500 square feet of gross floor area. They're required to have 30 spaces with 2 accessible, but they were providing 50 with 2 accessible spaces. The site is bounded on 3 sides by roadways. The access to the site will be off Waterfield Drive. The on-site sidewalks will connect to the public sidewalks that are being proposed with this plan. Lighting will include existing light poles and new wall packs. All light fixtures have 0 uplight and low glare and warm light. White light exhibiting color temperature no more than 4,000 Kelvin. The Garner 2018 Transportation Plan does not have any recommendations for Greenfield Parkway. With the addition of the sidewalks, these plans may be considered consistent with the recommendations of the 2018 Garner Forward Transportation Plan. The Parks and Recreation Open Space and Greenways Plan does not have any recommendations for this project area. Therefore, the project as proposed may be considered consistent with the Parks and Recreation Open Space and Greensway Master Plan. After sufficient review of the plans and revisions, staff finds this project as proposed conforms to the regulations of the UDO, so long as the project specific conditions are met. And those conditions are, prior to the receipt of approved plans, engineering department inspection fees must be paid to Town of Garner. Prior to the issuance of the first building permit, all applicable water and sewer fees must be paid to City of Raleigh Public Utilities Department. Prior to the issuance of the first building permit, the stormwater administrator shall be in receipt of proof of payment for the required nitrogen offset payment to an approved mitigation bank. And prior to the issuance of the first building permit, a satellite annexation petition shall be filed with Town of Garner Planning Department. Are there any questions for me?
What's the closest building to the east? Nope, to the west. Domino's?
Talking about right here?
That's, yes.
I am not sure what that building is.
Trying to determine if this was same site that we had reviewed 6 or 8 years ago and wound up in court.
It is.
I was,
Concrete plant.
Was the concrete plant on that lot proposed for the lot in between?
I think it was adjacent to it.
Once again, curiosity.
I'd be curious, I had intended to go online and look up the CCAC, but I didn't do that, or CACC. I'm supposing if you can't, somebody here that represents the company can
Yeah,
maybe
from
just
what
tell
I-
us a little bit about what, yeah.
They're a mechanical contractor, I believe. And he is here to talk, but I do believe it's a mechanical contractor that's based in Greensboro. They were expanding the business because everything is going pretty good.
Let me open the public hearing. Now, go ahead.
We are a HVAC mechanical
State your
firm.
name and address, please, sir.
My name is Bobby Allison.
And were you sworn?
No, I was not.
Would you let the clerk administer the oath?
Name
Thank
and
you, sir.
address.
Pick your little formalities.
It's okay.
Thank you.
We're a mechanical firm, HVAC mechanical and controls firm out of Greensboro. We've been in business for 50 years, 52 years. We made a move into the Raleigh area in 2015 and have grown dramatically. We currently have about 20 people employed, and we're in 2 bays over near the PNC Arena. And I got people that can't come to work because I don't have a place for them to sit. And we found this location about a year ago, and it was perfect for our site, and we look forward to housing our operation here.
Appreciate that. I believe your namesake is well known to some of the racing fans, I guess, as a NASCAR driver, is that right?
I have heard the question before, but no relation.
No relation to you. We're glad you came to our town.
Thank you.
Yes, from the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Rick Baker. I'm with the Timmons Group, 5410 Trinity Road, Suite 102 in Raleigh, 27607. We're the engineer on the project. Be happy to answer any questions about our site plan, but I'll give you a brief rundown of our site. The eastern side of the property is bounded by a stream with a riparian buffer. We are not proposing to disturb that riparian buffer. The proposed 15,000 square foot building will be towards Waterfield Drive, or the north side of the property, and our proposed 50 parking spaces would be between the building and Waterfield Drive. There is a 65-foot buffer required by Mr. Rayner's property, since that's a single-family residence there. So we have preserved that 65-foot buffer and will be supplementing it with additional plantings in addition to the trees that are there today. But also, we've moved the building and parking further up front or to the north side of the property to also give out a little more space from his home as well. For stormwater control, we're proposing a dry detention pond that will be on the southwest corner of the site outside of the riparian buffer, but in that area. We have reserved space for a 5,000 square foot future building expansion, but we accounted for all that impervious surface in our dry pond and are adding the parking today for that future expansion in case it ever comes online. So I'm glad to answer any additional questions.
Becky, you've been here like at 3 of our last 4 meetings, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
So I thought maybe you can come in and apply for a job. You've been here so much.
Well, we're always glad to be in Garner, I know that. So
Glad to have you
it's a
back.
great town, good people.
Thank you. We good.
No more witnesses, we can close the hearing.
Call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, let me see if I'm on the right page. I believe I am. I move that the council accept the staff statements regarding plan consistency in section 4 of this report as our own, and find the application meets the 10 permit criteria in section 3.14.d, and therefore approve SUP SP 1902 CCA building solutions with the 3 standard conditions and the 4 site specific conditions to be listed on the permit that will be prepared by the staff.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next on the agenda, new and
Mayor,
old.
I have one question. Mr. Allison?
Yes.
Did you say that you are a Greensboro native?
Yes.
And which high school did you go to?
Well, actually, I went to high school in Fayetteville.
Okay, then you passed then. It's okay. I'm from Greensboro as well.
Okay, on the new and old business, the first is Z 1903, David Banford, general use rezoning.
Mayor and members of council, this is a general use rezoning request. This involves 2 pieces of property under the same ownership. The addresses are 2548 and 2608 East Garner Road. The property owner is Mr. Kilgore. The total size of the rezoning site is 4.5 acres in size. This went to the public hearing back on May the 21st. This went to the Planning Commission on June the 17th, and they did recommend approval of this request. And this is before you tonight for action. This is an aerial photograph of the rezoning site. It's outlined in orange. And there's a smaller tract that's located on the western end, and then the larger piece is located here. And there is a creek that runs that crosses under East Garner Road. East Garner Road runs along the northern, this site's on the southern portion of East Garner Road. Auburn-Knightdale Road is located off the map to the west, and Rock Quarry Road is about a half a mile to the east. This shows the zoning of this area of Garner. The smaller tract is zone R20. The larger portion is zoned R40. The requested zoning is RMH, which is residential manufactured home. The proposed zoning allows stick-built homes, modular homes, double-wide homes, and then single-wide mobile homes. The predominant zoning in this area is R40. This did come into Garner's ETJ back in 2017. So up until that time, this was all under Wake County, zoned R30 under their jurisdiction. South of the rezoning site across the railroad tracks, we have I-1 or light industrial zoning, which does include an RV mobile home park and also some, I believe, outdoor storage and some modular home sales. This map shows some of the uses in this area. The rezoning site is outlined or shaded in yellow, and the manufactured homes are outlined in blue. The mobile home park to the south is this site here. There are some non-conforming uses that are in the area that, again, were under Wake County's jurisdiction and then came under Garner in 2017. Across the street from the rezoning site, we have Grady's Auto Repair. A little farther to the west, we have a home-based business that repairs lawnmowers, and a little farther to the west, we have Bird's Auto Service. So there's a mix of residential, some commercial, there's single family, and also some mobile homes in this area. The difference between the existing and the proposed zoning is the minimum lot size. Under the UDO, if a lot has public water and sewer, you could go down to 5,000 square feet. 10,000 square feet is the minimum lot size without public water and sewer. However, in reality, with the well and septic permit from Wake County, lot size per dwelling unit is probably going to be between 30,000 to 40,000 square feet. So I do not, this staff's opinion is that you probably will not get a 10,000 square foot lot without water and sewer. It's going to be more in the 1 acre size. There's some minor differences with front, rear, and side yard setbacks. The density, again, that's in this column here is based on the minimum lot sizes allowed under the UDO. This, again, in this area of Garner, there's no public water and sewer, so minimum lot size per dwelling unit is going to be around 1 acre. This table shows what the what uses would go away and then what uses would be added if the site is rezoned to RMH. So the uses shaded in pink or light red would no longer be permissible on the site. And that would include schools, agricultural uses, group family care homes, cluster developments. Uses that would be added as a permissible use on the site would include manufactured homes Class B. And the difference between a Class A and a Class B. A Class A is a double-wide manufactured home that has some standards. A Class A manufactured home is required to have at least a 6-inch eave overhang from the roof. Also required is a permanent foundation. Some siding standards are required. A Class B mobile home does not have those standards. It's still a double wide, but it's not required to have any eave overhang. Another difference is the length to width ratio. There is one required for a Class A. There's not one required for a Class B. And a Class C manufactured home is a single wide. Manufactured home parks or subdivisions would also be a permissible use. And again, a use like that would have to come in for a site plan approval. If anybody wanted to put an individual single-family house, a modular house, or a manufactured home, single wide or double wide, all they'd have to do is come in and get a building permit. For a mobile home park subdivision, they'd have to come in for a full site plan review. This is the Garner forward plan. The plan designates this area as low-density residential. To the north, we have some medium-density residential, and medium density is 2.5 to 5 units an acre. Low density is 2.5 and less. On the south side of the railroad tracks, we have the lavender purple color. That is light industrial center. Again, future land use could include office, warehouse, and flex space. The requested zoning change conflicts with the density of the long-range plan because the UDO allows a 5,000 square foot lot if it has water and sewer, and a 10,000 square foot lot if it does not. The proposed zoning does not conflict with the surrounding land uses or zoning. There is some RMH in the area a little farther to the east of this site. Because there is a conflict with the density, a plan amendment would be needed to designate the site from low density up to medium density to account for the UDO's allowable 5,000 square foot lot size for water and sewer, and then 10,000 square foot lot size without water and sewer. Again, in staff's opinion, a well and septic tank permit on the site for an individual dwelling unit, whether it's a stick-built house or a manufactured house, lot size will probably be close to an acre in size. The public hearing for this request was held on May the 21st. The applicant did speak in favor in support of this request. One property owner did speak in opposition to this request with concerns over impacts to property values and the character of the existing neighborhood. Planning Commission did review this request at their June 17th meeting and did recommend approval of the request in addition to the comprehensive plan amendment to designate or redesignate the site from low density up to medium density residential. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Again, we've already had the public hearing, and this did go to Planning Commission, and this is back to you for action. The applicant is also here if you have any questions for him.
David, thank you for your good presentation. As you noted, yeah, we did have at least one person speak in opposition to this proposal. So help me understand, I've heard you quote the density and the acreage there. So if this property were to be used, it's something a little over 4 acres for manufactured homes, essentially, how many units could be placed on this acreage? Did you say 1 per acre?
That's our estimate. I mean, for a well and septic permit, the site's got a perk, and that's usually the minimum size is about 1 acre. It depends on the soils. So the site's about, I think you said 4.5 acres.
Yeah, I believe.
and there's enough frontage to where you could have 4 lots with, the minimum lot size would probably be close to 100 feet in width, or in the current R40 it is. So you could have lots with enough frontage where you could have about 4 dwelling units, whether it's all single family or a mix of single family, stick built, and manufactured homes.
Okay, and perhaps the property owner might be able to answer this better than you, but as I understand it, he has a buyer or potential buyer. So while I think he mentioned to us that he'd like to have it to place one home there. Obviously, if it's sold to someone else, then that person then could put whatever these requirements allow, which sounds like up to at least 4, possibly more. But I'd be curious to know if he can tell us any more about the potential buyer in terms of the intention for that person's use. Maybe he can, I don't know.
Sure, I'll let him answer that question.
But could
Yes,
we,
sir. Yes, sir.
go back to the map that shows back up in your presentation? One that's got all that's pointing out where there's other developments. Yes, that one. So we've already got a number of subdivisions and/or sites of mobile homes and/or manufactured homes.
Right, there's no mobile home, with the exception of the larger site south of the railroad track. That is a RV mobile home park. Everything else is on individual lots mixed in and scattered with stick-built homes.
I was just going by what's on the map here. It says mobile/manufactured homes. But this particular site is a combination of R20 and R40 currently. It be an overstatement, or would it be a correct statement to say that a down zoning to honor this request?
It would allow the addition of a single-wide manufactured home, and then it under the UDO standards, it's increasing the density. So the RMH typically is a rural district that's on the periphery of the town, and you don't really see it in the heart of town. But to answer your question, it would fall into our agricultural zonings, and it would be comparable to like R20 or R40, with the additional use of a single-wide mobile home or a mobile home subdivision.
I think you mentioned also we already do have some non-conforming uses. And under the current zoning, manufactured home obviously would not be allowed, otherwise the applicant wouldn't be here.
Under the larger tract, which is the eastern piece, that does allow a double-wide Class A manufactured home. It's the double-wide that has the additional standards of a permanent foundation, the eave overhang. So it does allow a double-wide manufactured home under the current R40 zoning.
So explain why we have an applicant here if manufactured home is already allowed.
He would like the flexibility to allow a single-wide mobile home on the entire site. He has had some buyers, and it wasn't clear exactly where it would go on the site. So staff was not comfortable just zoning one piece over the other, because the smaller piece is zone R20, and it's open. It's got a clearing where you could put a structure. However, some of our discussions in the past was the buyers didn't know where they wanted to put it. And there was talk about subdividing that piece into several single-family lots, whether it had a stick-built or a manufactured home on it. So to answer your question, the applicant wanted the flexibility to allow a single-wide, which is a new use that would be permissible on the site.
Let me remind the council, we've had the public hearing. The applicant here, let's hear from the applicant.
No, I got some questions from Mr. Manager. I'm not ready to hear from the applicant yet. So, the fact is, it's a general use rezoning, and the fact is, it states right here in our chart that you could put 4+ units per acre in there without public water and sewer. That's a fact, right? Even though y'all say it'd probably be an acre, the fact is this thing could hold 16 mobile homes, correct? Based on the zoning, that's a fact, right? All right. So that's a fact. I'm just saying what we're proposing is make it could be much more dense. So if this was denied, what can Mr. Kilgore put on there? Can he not put something on there now? Well, I mean, if we don't rezone it, can he put a manufactured home on the site? What would prevent him from doing it?
On the R40 portion, he can do stick-built, modular, and a double-wide Class A manufactured home.
Not a single wide.
Not a single
Okay.
wide.
All right.
On the R20 portion, he can only do a stick-built and a modular house. So Class A manufactured are not permissible in R20, only R40.
What was the rationale? Was there any discussion by the planning commission? And if so, what was the overall reasoning that allowed, that culminated in a unanimous vote to approve?
The planning commission did hear from the applicant. The applicant kind of explained kind of what his plans were, and I believe they also considered the existing land uses in the area and where it was located in Garner. It's east of Auburn Knightdale Road, and it's more in a more rural setting. So I believe existing land use, kind of the existing zoning in the area, there is some RMH in the vicinity, and also input from the applicant.
Again, we're almost ready, I guess, to hear from you. I'm assuming Mr. Gilmore can tell us, since there was a statement there had been mobile homes on this property before when it was part of Wake County, so I'd be curious to know how many mobile homes may have been on the property under the Wake County zoning.
Yeah, I'll let him address that.
So when we redid the UDO, the single wides were eliminated from being owned, installed on R20 or R40 lots.
That is correct.
They were previously allowed.
I don't believe they were. We had an old zoning district called R5, which was what RMH is now, and it's my understanding that single wides have always been permissible, or at least going back 20, 30 years, in that R5 or what's now RMH zoning. So I don't believe single wides were ever permissible in R20 or R40.
I figured why you wouldn't allow single wides, you would allow double wides. I know you told me about the height, the overhang and all that stuff, but I'm still hadn't figured out why somebody could put a single wide on there. Change the UDO, now they can't put a single wide there, but they can put a double wide there. I just don't understand the logic. Mobile home is if it's a double wide or a single wide or a triple wide, it's still a mobile home. I know it's got a different classification, but I still don't understand why the heck we changed it then in that area if it's rural and matching it. Because once again, here we are, and you got to make an amendment because we're changing it from low density to medium density. We're being asked to change it from low density to medium density. And so it doesn't conform to the UDO, so once again, we're changing the UDO. It's inconsistent, I'm sorry, with the comprehensive plan, excuse me, not the UDO, comprehensive plan. I'm just trying to figure out how the heck we ended up here to begin with if he could put one there before. Because if you didn't want to put it there before, if you didn't want to put it there, or it sounds like you changed this so you don't want to put it there, but now you're saying it's okay because the surrounding neighborhood, so it's okay to put it there. That just seems like we're going around in a circle. We changed the comprehensive plan, and now we're saying it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, but they could put it there before, but they can't put it there now. But we're saying it's okay because it's in the same existing neighborhood.
Yeah, just to clarify, that the area was in Wake County's jurisdiction up until
I understand.
2 years ago.
Why the heck we're even here? Put the single wide out there and move on, but anyway, I don't understand.
I was just reminding him that it was, to mention that it was Wake County zoning, so that caused some of the changes. So,
But what's being, again, allowed and or being asked, because it's a general rezoning, is you could put 4+ units per acre on there. I know it doesn't have public water and sewer, but you could, so you could put 16 units out there. And I don't think that's what we want to do. I would hope we wouldn't want to do that. So again, that's why I'm saying it looks like Mr. Kilgore's getting penalized for something he didn't ask for. But I sure wouldn't want to approve something that's got 4 units per acre on it, because that's like we're going backwards. My opinion. I don't know why you wouldn't allow him to put 1 unit out there to begin with, but that's just me. Like going, in this particular case, going from Wake County zoning to our zoning, you've handicapped the property owner. I have no problem if you put 1 unit out there as it existed, but again, you're asking to zone it that could put 4 units per acre. So we're going backwards. I don't understand. I would not support the rezoning because of the fact that you can put 4 units per acre on there. And again, that sounds like we're going backwards. I'm not sure why he couldn't put it on there to begin with, but that's just me. Sounds like we've created a bureaucratic roadblock for something pretty simple. Just Gray's opinion. I probably might pass, but I don't know.
What I'm gonna do is let's hear from the applicant, remind ourselves again, this is not a public hearing, and then the council should be ready to take action or otherwise.
Thank y'all for the opportunity. My name is Tommy Kilgore. I live at 3737 West Lake Road, Apex, North Carolina, 27539. I'm asking for this rezoning. There's just within 0.8 of a mile of this property is 42 mobile homes. Most people that's calling me about my land are asking, can they put a mobile home here? Not a manufactured home, but a mobile home. How much affordable housing do y'all have in Garner where you can put affordable housing?
A lot.
A lot?
A lot. We have more than, us in Eastern Wake County have a lot. We have the most in Wake County.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what you're trying to do. I just think we've put a roadblock up in front of you that shouldn't be there. That's just my opinion. That's just me.
Like I said, most of the people that are calling me, they want to put a single wide mobile home on it. They're not asking to put a park. I see where you're coming from, but there's no way you could put 16 mobile homes there. I know it says 5,000 square feet if you got water and sewer.
But I know that, but it says you're allowed to do, someone could be allowed to do that, not just that someone could be allowed to do that.
How many is in Auburn Estates?
400.
400?
400 houses in Auburn Estates.
How about mobile home park?
He's talking about the mobile home park, yeah.
I'm talking about the mobile home park right up the road.
I don't know. I think our difficulty is it's a matter of the economics. It's also what Grace said. We were actually looking for the logical way that you could do what you wanted to do under an existing ordinance plan, so as to not deny you the right to utilize your own property.
Yes, sir.
At the same time, we've also been allowed and granted the jurisdiction, extraterritorial jurisdiction, to plan for Garner's future And just simply stated, going to mobile homes it's going exactly backwards from where we would want it to go.
Why wouldn't you want to help the less fortunate who can't afford a house, that wants to live in Garner, that could buy an acre of land and put a mobile home on?
But we are not the resource of last resort for Wake County. And we have, as you say, there's a lot of places out there already. And what you're recommending or asking for, once it's granted and once you sign the deed, what you had in mind and what you understand means essentially nothing, because the next owner is armed then with a zoning to change and do other things, which is not in Garner's best interest for the long run.
Yes, sir. If a church bought this next week, they want to put mobile homes for Sunday school classes. They couldn't do it. Am I correct?
Let's close this out. You got any closing comments?
Well, let me ask him, just out of this sort of curiosity, do you know how many mobile homes previously have been in this area? You mentioned that there were...
On this land?
Yeah.
Two. Two houses and 2 mobile homes. Yes, sir.
Okay. I rode by there today, but I never did spot the site. Are the 2 houses still on the property?
1 house and 1 mobile home.
I would have no trouble with you doing what you want to do. It's just when you rezone it on general use, you open that up. And I know what you're saying. I had no trouble with what you're trying to do at all. But when we rezone it and you can allow that density, that's the problem I have. I'm trying to figure out what the roadblock is why you can't put one on there right now. But anyway, that's
Well, if you've already got one on there.
It's not livable.
Sorry?
It's not livable.
Okay.
We'll hear from the planning director. You ready?
I think the very issue that you all are struggling with is the same issue that we've been trying to assist through this process. And the fact is that there just is no current tool in the existing UDO that would allow for this to happen except to rezone to the RMH district. There's no other zoning district, no other tool that allows for single wide manufactured homes in the Garner UDO.
In any existing district. And it's not allowed in RMH either.
So this is a little bit of an issue where, again, we've just gone through the comp plan, but we're still dealing with zoning districts that were set up under previous visions for the town. And so our current zoning districts may not always be worded the best to implement the new vision, which is why we need to go ahead and get started on rewriting the UDO. And again, for whatever reason, back in the day, manufactured homes were codified in the ordinance into 3 different types. And you had single wide, and then you had double wides that didn't meet certain size requirements, and then you had the double wides that did meet the size requirements. So there's 3 different classes, and the only place that this single wide class is permitted is in this RMH district. And then it just so happens that it was also used to promote mobile home parks, and that's where you get the density allowance that you're struggling with.
Why didn't we have a conditional zoning that just said we're going to put 1 lot on it? Would that have resolved it?
You could, and again, I think we may have mentioned that early on. To do that for a single house is maybe a little bit onerous, but that is possible, because you have to go through the whole site plan process up front, and that's usually more than what we would ask a single homeowner to do.
So under the current zoning, if he sold this property, or if he didn't, he could put double wide manufactured home or mobile homes, is that right? And how many of those could be placed out there?
That which would be supported by septic tank.
So if the existing R40 portion is about 3.5 acres, you could do three double wides, Class A.
Here's part of the, trying to think for both sides, trying to stand on first and second, and you occupy both bases at the same time. If I was the property owner, I'd like to be able to do what other people around me are doing. I'd like to be able to do what I wanted to do. I can agree with you. I can agree with you in philosophically. Requesting what you're asking for, I can take a couple of steps down the road beyond what you have control over, and we get something we definitely do not want would be detrimental to the town, in our opinion. I don't think, I cannot imagine anywhere, anytime in the future that we will approve mobile home park. Could be wrong. At the same time, if we have sufficient votes and deny this, then you put in no man's land for coming back and asking for something different for some specified amount of time. Then I'd have to ask planning staff, Jeff, David, how long before we can come back with a new application after a motion denied or rezoning request denied?
Isn't it 12 months where you can ask for another rezone?
As long as it's different, I don't think there's any time.
Best remedy for you may be, and you may want to, so that we don't close out your options, or you may have some time, you might want to request that this issue be tabled until you can regroup and rethink this before some final decision is made that you may not like. And I'm not suggesting whatever you do, but I don't want to tie your hands. Like for you to be able to work within the regulations, and if that requires more time, then an appropriate strategy might be to table so that you can be able to fight another day. And I don't want to give you advice. All I can suggest to you is you have options.
That's correct.
And we will have to vote up or down.
I understand. And the question I asked you a while ago, if a church buys this next week and want to put some mobile homes out there for some Sunday school classes, that would be a definite no the way it stands today. Is that correct?
According to that, they said we can't put single wides out there.
Well,
That's what they said.
but if it's a single wide that this claims to be a house or an inhabited dwelling, that's one thing. If it's a classroom, entirely different.
It's going to have a bathroom in
it. Then you know more about it than I would, but we're just looking at it at face value of what's before us tonight.
Sir.
Look, I've tried everything else. Bill, do you want to give us an opinion on this?
No, sir.
I would just say to you, Ms. Kilgore, doesn't help you for me to say I'm sympathetic to your plight, but I tend to agree with Mr. Singleton and maybe other comments have been made. I would struggle to approve a rezoning. Circumstances would make a difference. I don't know even if you retained ownership and said, well, this is what I'm going to do, then we would have to trust your word.
I can't afford to build I can't afford to build a house there. That's why I don't live there today.
Yeah.
And the people that are calling me about it, they can't afford to build a house there either, man. They're just asking the place to.
And you cannot replace the house, the mobile home that's there. You can't do a direct replacement.
Not the way it sits today, no, sir. No single wide is allowed on there today.
Yeah, but if you've got a single wide on there now,
According to what it said, he can't replace it, because it's got to be, I can get a permit, because it's got to be inspected.
is that right, David?
Under our UDO, he's lost his grandfather's status because it hasn't been replaced within 6 months of it being damaged. So therefore, anything that goes on would have to be conforming, which would be stick-built, modular, or a double-wide Class A. And just to clarify one thing that was said earlier about the church and the Sunday school classrooms, I believe the building code would require a modular commercial type unit that had, handicap ramps, and so the classrooms could be a modular unit, but not, a residential manufactured house, if that makes any sense. Just to clarify that.
But you said some of the comments made by the planning commission, they felt since it was east of Auburn, Knightdale Road, and it was more rural, it was allowed and that was okay. But again, there's single wides out there, so single wides have been existing out there for years and years. I still don't understand why we can't, I still don't allow this. Again, why you can't do this? It's just bizarre to me why he can't put a single wide out there if he wanted to. Because, now could he do it before we was in ETJ, could he do it? If it was Wake County rural zoning, could he do
I
it?
believe that would be permissible in the Wake County R30 zoning district. Now, in order for this to be permissible in R40, we'd have to go through a text amendment, and that would apply to R40 everywhere throughout Garner's jurisdiction.
I understand that. That you have to allow that, but again, the logic that was used, you said the planning commission was it was east of Auburn, Knightdale Road, and it was more rural and would conform to the surrounding neighborhood. So if they felt that way, then, maybe we need to make a text amendment. I'm just saying, he could do it before, but now we put him in the ETJ and he can't do it. I just, again, we've thrown up a bureaucratic roadblock in your way that, in my opinion, shouldn't be there. I have no trouble if you want to put a single wide out there, because you could do it before, and they are surrounding you, but our zoning doesn't allow it.
Here again, let's close discussion and take a vote on this.
Kathy, you and Elmo got anything to say?
Not at this moment.
Covered it pretty well, so I'm good.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Is there merit in tabling this? I don't guess any further discussion. Speak further to potential buyers regarding the issue if it's not rezoned to
A question as you look at the map, one of the maps here, there's a lot of R40 around there. And then, of course, as staff provided us the map, oh my gosh, went the wrong way, with what's existing around there, other mobile home parks, et cetera, are out there. And there are R40, and maybe they're family owned or whatever. But if they were family owned and somebody wanted to put a mobile home out there based off our zoning, someone couldn't do that. And this is defined as being in the more rural area. So I'm just, again, I think when we went to the comprehensive plan update, again, I think we threw up a roadblock. I didn't think that a situation like this had to come up for us to see it, and it had to get filtered through to a certain extent, and that's where we're at. If you could zone it and you can put one out there, that's fine. I had no trouble with that, but the zoning allows 4 per acre. And you're right, you probably couldn't put them there, but again, that's what it allows. We all know once you rezone it, that's it.
And David, if this were denied tomorrow, if the prospective buyer says, I can go with a double wide, that can be approved right there in your office. He would be allowed to do it.
Yes, sir, they can come in. Probably what they'd have to do is we might need a subdivision of the site to because there's, I guess, maybe 2 structures on there now. One of them we know is damaged from Hurricane Fran. The other one may be repairable, but both are not livable. And so we require one dwelling unit per lot. So we may need a minor subdivision to carve out a portion of that R40 piece to make it legal. But they would come to our office and get a building permit. Worst case, have to do another step and get a minor subdivision and carve out an acre to leave the other structures on the larger parent tract.
I'll call for a motion again.
I would just assume we table it and not address it. I don't put him in a bind by denying it. I'll try to table it and we'll see what goes. The attorney may tell me we can't do that. Can we not table it? I move that we table general use rezoning cases E1903 East Garner Road indefinitely.
Second.
Second.
Motion made, second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay, let's move on. Chris Johnson. Rec Center.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Chris Johnson with the Town of Garner Engineering Department. First item we've got tonight is regarding a change order that's proposed in conjunction with the Garner Rec site construction. As you're well aware, in addition to the work being done at the Garner Rec Center, there was also work that was incorporated into the project at the Garner Performing Arts Center, most notably to add some new parking bays which have already been completed, as well as doing some repair work in the existing parking lot. During the time the contractor went out to start mobilization and preparing for the overlay work, they brought it to staff's attention there was concerns about the existing pavement. Staff went out, did a field inspection. I know this is all incorporated into your backup, but figured the pictures might be easier to see on the larger screen than they were in that format. But there's a lot of alligator cracking around the existing parking lot, and there's certainly concerns that if the contractor was simply to go in and install an inch or inch and a half of, I think it's an inch of overlay across the existing parking lot, then that existing cracking, just reflective cracking, could just come right up through the new proposed layer of asphalt over a short period of time, requiring further repairs down the road. So staff went out, took some pictures. As you can see in this picture, there's several areas that looks like they've been patched over time. Some areas obviously have potholes, but you can also see discolorations where it looks like certain areas had been paved at different times over the years, probably with minor expansions here and there. The parking bays themselves are in good shape. It's mostly the travel lanes that get the most traffic that we're seeing the alligator cracking. So staff went back and got an area of in quotes, we looked at a couple different options, but what came back as the most economic option is to just go in and mill the existing travel lanes an inch and a half down, replace that, and then we did do a proof roll a couple weeks ago, and the proof roll went very well. So we don't believe there's any major subgrade issues. So we were wanting to mill an inch and a half off, overlay it with an inch and a half back, and that's the part that's the change order. Then they come in with the overlay that's already a part of the original contract. I'll note that there was a question that came up as to whether this would also involve any kind of time extension to the overall contract. The answer to that question is no. This is not critical path work. Critical path work is along Montague, Purvis, and US 70. Contractor's been working back and forth with the town, and they've also been working to coordinate. We've got a busy summer schedule, of course, at the Performing Arts Center, and they're looking to work this thing in over the course of July at times that work best for the GPAC. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. But basically, the areas highlighted in blue on this screen, that's the areas we're talking about for milling and filling 1.5 inches of asphalt. And the cost to make that is, staff's estimated no more than $40,000, and it would be based on actual quantities. We've got unit costs for this, and we would actually bill it actual quantities.
So let me ask the question. I'm glad we're doing this because it desperately needs it. Because, I mean, the school closed in the late 80s, and I don't think the parking lot had any work done to it before then. And this thing will be 35, 40 years since it's had any work done to it, so it desperately needs attention. And repair, the resurfacing, restriping, et cetera. The question is, you asked us to cap it at $40,000. What if it comes up and by the time they do it, there's a price increase? I mean, why would we cap it? I mean, if you get around the corner, we'll run out of money. Why would we cap it at $40,000? And I'm not being negative, but
We've calculated the areas, and we've got unit costs, and based on the area you're seeing on the screen today, that would be no more than 40,000. We actually may be able to get away with less milling and patching than what's shown here. But this is what we feel is a maximum area that needs to be milled at this time.
let's don't cut any milling out that doesn't need to be. Again, this parking lot desperately needs attention. I'm just wondering why you put a cap on it, then all of a sudden you get in there and realize it's more. I mean, is it gonna be a fixed cost and they can do it for that regardless?
No, it would be a maximum of 40, and we're hoping we might be able to come in under. But this is based just trying to control costs and not milling more than what's necessary. We feel that we've got a conservative quantity of repair work.
I suspect he's capping it because he doesn't want 6 months from now to come back in, and if it costs $60,000 and hear the council fuss at him by saying we didn't anticipate it was going to be that much.
Well, just to reiterate, this isn't the contractor capping it. This was staff's recommendation to cap it.
And what I'll do is I want it done right, and I don't want all of a sudden we get up there and they say, well, we don't have enough money, we're not gonna mill this, even though it probably needs to. That's my concern, is that we're gonna, and no offense, but let's be honest, our estimates of cost and work recently, the last couple of years has not been very strong. We've been off on a continual basis. Just what I'm getting, I'm just being honest.
No, if it's council's desire to raise that cap or eliminate the cap, that would be absolutely fine.
I just want to make sure that we have enough money to do it right, not to do it halfway.
Mr. Johnson, in reference to the age of the asphalt, has it passed its life expectancy, its time?
I would imagine so.
Okay, so it is.
I've not been working here that long, but as old as this facility is and the way it looks, I would think it's far exceeded its life expectancy.
Okay, so the repairs are definitely needed.
Yes, sir.
It's a need, not a want. It's clearly a need.
That's right.
Okay. And your cost estimates are they compatible? Are they competitive costs for
yes.
the
We've
days?
looked at the costs. They're basically provided us unit costs that are actually tied back to the original contract.
Yeah, and they're tied. I guess the point I'm making is on the market piece. It's competitive with the market price of replacing asphalt at this time in the market.
Yes.
Go back to the picture that you provided.
Which one?
Yes.
That one?
Either one.
Okay.
How about the parking spaces?
Parking spaces appeared to be in good shape. They did not have the alligator cracking that the travel lanes did, which was why we did not recommend milling them at this time.
So the parking spaces will be overlaid?
They will be, everything will be overlaid, but we're only asking for milling replacement of existing asphalt in the travel lanes.
And when we finish, we're still going, when we get used to something, we tend to take it as the norm and don't even think about anything different. And I look here, we're still going straight from pavement to grass. And in the other picture that you had, we got a pothole there. We got a place where off the beaten path, and we'll have a mud puddle. Can you foresee coming back in a few years down the road and say, oh, we've got to improve this parking lot and put in curb and gutter, and would this tear up anything that we've already done?
I mean, that's a little hard to say. It's always possible. I think given the amount of traffic, given that it's a parking lot and not like a thoroughfare, I think the chances of that are lower. And like I said, as long as this facility's been going, and the fact that when we did a proof roll, they didn't see any kind of failure or movement of the subgrade, means that it's actually held up pretty well. I think there's only about 1.5 inches of asphalt out there at all. So to be able to go for so many decades, it seems to have held up pretty well.
Particularly if you say you proof rolled it and that held up.
Getting the buses off of it helped. The buses used to just drive right up to the front, and so getting them off of it 30 years ago helped a lot.
Any further discussion?
Well, we'll be managing exactly what's, town staff will designate exactly what's to be milled and what's to be repaired.
Yes, sir.
I would agree with Gray that a self-imposed limit might be appealing on the one hand, but I'd rather for you to have the flexibility and that we're in complete charge of it and can control the cost. Already at almost a $9 million project with the rec center. At one time, I was going to, if we already got the unit prices, then it's not subject to a typical change or some change orders where you don't have unit prices and you get elevated prices. So there's no reason to cut this out and say this is just overpriced and we'll go somewhere else and get our resurfacing contractor to come in here and do it.
Yeah, no, and actually it's the same contractor anyway. So
Is it?
yeah, Gilder and Associates is the paving contractor on this job, who's also the resurfacing contractor.
So I'm ready to call for the question. I don't want to stymie any other discussion, but I'm looking at the recommendation here. Could we change the wording there? And I would move that we authorize the town manager to execute the change order with road construction in amount to be determined by the town engineer. I'll put that in the form of a motion. It may not get it.
So by saying what you said said the amount that so you gave him flexibility around $40,000. You didn't lock it into that price. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. I thought we were.
Okay, that's fine. Again, I just want to make sure you have enough money. I know you got unit cost. I know what our track record's been on estimating costs recently.
And I think that, well, the motion in my mind implies that the town engineer has already stated that he believes it can be done for 40,000, maybe less than that. So I
But it
respect
may be more.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I respect his judgment.
What if gas spikes? What if you have a gas spike next week and petroleum prices go up, then asphalt prices go up? Just telling you, it can happen.
We got escalation clause in the contract.
The way that's set up, I'd have to go back and look at it, but I think that we use the asphalt index, so that's kind of incorporated in. But the majority of the costs other than that it can't change.
Okay, there was a motion, now it has failed for lack of a second.
Well, no, Mr. Marshman explained that he gave him flexibility that if he needed to go higher than $40,000, he could. Isn't that what you intended, Mr. Marshman?
Exactly.
All right, then I'll second it.
Okay, motion made, second, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Chris, you're still up.
All right, thank you. So our second item for tonight is a project update on the Timber Drive sidewalk connectors. This is also, as you know, a federal LAP project, NCDOT project number C5604RA. Brief agenda for tonight. We're going to go over some project background, talk to you about the work that we've completed to date, as well as talk about funding recap, as well as possible changes upcoming to the project funding. We've got a supplemental agreement with our design consultant, SEPI Engineering, that we've got for consideration, and then followed up by staff recommendations and next steps moving ahead. So brief background, we're going to be adding sidewalk along the south side of Timber Drive. We've got two sections. One section is between Blanton Street and Stowe Place. The second section between Hearth Drive and Timber Drive, or Timber Crossing Shopping Center. The entire alignment right now, we've got a standard typical section of 5-foot sidewalk, measured 2.5 feet off the back of curb that's there today. It's approximately 30 properties impacted by the project. There is no right-of-way dedication required anywhere, although there are temporary construction easements required, mostly along the frontages of those properties that have proposed sidewalk. And once completed, if I measure correctly, this will provide over 3.5 miles of continuous sidewalk on both sides of Timber Drive from Devandora Springs Road intersection to east of White Oak Road. So very good pedestrian connectivity along the entire corridor once this is completed. And it's just a quick map that shows the areas that we're filling in. The areas to the left, three intersections is the section 1, and then there's an existing gap of sidewalk that crosses through the Aversboro intersection. We pick back up for the second section as we approach NC 50. So I know this is a busy slide, but I know the LAP project started I guess over a year and a half ago. So LAP project was submitted by town staff back in 2017. Had to put out a request for qualifications that started in early 18. The next three lines, just for those that don't understand, the PEF acronym is private engineering firm, pretty common from DOT, that's what they use. But from March 2018 through July, the town went through the required procurement process that ended with DOT providing concurrence on that recommendation to use SEPI in August of 2018. The contract was drafted and finalized and executed in October of that same year, and then SEPI began work in November, so about 7 months ago now. In April, preliminary design was completed and submitted to DOT for review. As you may remember, in May, we came to you with a supplemental agreement regarding some public involvement preparation. That was executed, and then we held the public meeting on May 16th of this year. And then at the end of May, early June, we completed our 65% plans, submitted those to NCDOT, and those were actually approved as submitted. We've recently, with the help of the Town Attorney's Office, began easement acquisition. So the notification letters went out to all owners along the corridor that were being impacted. And that sort of brings us to where we are today with this project update and the request for another supplemental agreement. So to touch on the project funding, the original LAP agreement, which was dated back in October of 17, was an 80-20 split between federal monies and town monies. The LAP agreement included reimbursement for design and construction. However, right-of-way and private utility relocations were not part of the LAP agreement, so those are 100% locally funded. The total original LAP agreement amount was $406,000, with 80% of that coming from the federal and 20% from the town.
Chris, would you explain for the public who's listening or watching what LAP stands for?
Locally administered project partnership?
Priority projects.
What's that?
Priority projects.
Priority projects, sorry. It's been a while since I've actually had to say it.
Which is a process for getting assistance in building some of these
That's right.
projects.
It's for a local municipality to construct and get assistance through the federal government. So, like I said, the original estimate for construction, I'll go back one slide. So the design 62.4 was the approved design funding, and 344,290 was the original construction funding. So moving into this slide, the current construction estimate that we received as of June of this year from SEPI is currently higher than the original construction estimate from 2017. Yes, quite a bit higher. The original estimate that we looked at from 2017 was a 7 or 8 itemized list of items. Of course, what we have today is probably 30, 40, 50 line items that have been broken down much more accurately and more comprehensively. There is also some additional costs that staff feels need to be added in for a possible LAP agreement revision to cover some other services that were not included in the original request, which include materials testing services. Every time you do a federal project, there are strict guidelines by the LAP process that require you to do extensive testing of all soils, concrete, stone, and asphalt along the project, and more so than what you would typically do without the federal funding element. There's also construction administration services that the staff would need. Again, due to the federal guidelines and the stringent timelines associated with it, there is a lot more paperwork that's involved for a LAP project. So town staff would recommend having that service added in to the construction costs so that we could acquire those services from a private engineering firm. So, and this table is taken from your backup. As stated, we're in July now of 2019, and we have a very tight time frame to finish all the work required to get to 100% approval and obtain construction authorization to obtain the federal funding for the construction phase of the project, which the federal fiscal year is September 30th. So about 3 months left to get through the right-of-way acquisition. We also have to get right-of-way certification from NCDOT. Then we have to submit our 100% plans, specifications, and estimate to DOT for review and approval before we can obtain construction authorization. So based on our discussions with Campo and DOT staff, we have to obtain approval of an increase, if we were to request an increase in LAP funding by the end of the September deadline in order to keep a 80-20 match on those additional costs. So if we're able to complete everything and submit that LAP agreement by the end of September and obtain approval, then this would be the new split, assuming we added in all the recommendations that we had for construction, materials testing, and construction administration, which would go to a total of about $750,000 with an 80-20 split. If for whatever reason we were unable to meet that deadline, and of course, as I stated earlier, this is a tight timeline. It's a lot of work to do, but should we not be able to meet that deadline, the additional costs that if we submit for a LAP request, those additional funding would have to be split at a 50-50 ratio instead of 80-20. That's just their standard policy after that deadline. So if that was to happen, these would be the costs for the same total cost, but given a 50-50 split for lines 3 and 4 for the additional costs added, which would turn out to be a roughly 2/3, 1/3 split overall. Do you have any questions on that before I move on? Because I know that's a lot of information.
That's just, I mean, I reckon the biggest question is you say it's a tight timeline, and if we don't meet it, our original projected cost was $81,338, and we're looking at $250,000. We'll have tripled our cost, our participation. I'll rephrase that. I mean, what are the chances of it really getting done? I mean, again, I hate to say our past track record has not been good on getting deadlines. I'd hate to be that blunt about it, but we have not hit deadlines recently.
We'll hear about that in a minute.
Okay.
We are going to move as hard as we can.
Okay.
Moving into the next phase, the other item for tonight on this same project is the supplemental agreement. There were two services. First service we've shown as buffer permitting. In the original agreement, the way the agreement was set up was that SEPI would do an investigation for the environmental along the corridor and do what the minimum paperwork necessary for what they call a categorical exclusion, which is required by DOT in conjunction with the federal LAP process. That work has been submitted and completed. There is one area where we are going to we're not getting into the stream or into the wetlands, but we are getting into the buffer, which sometimes can extend even up into the shoulder or the roadway itself. DOT has responded back that that paperwork is required, and so this was outlined in the initial agreement and scoped if it was needed, but the price was left out of the initial agreement. So the $3,000 would allow SEPI to complete that paperwork. And then the second line item for right-of-way staking, again, right-of-way was not, the only part of in the original contract was for them to provide the right-of-way acquisition areas on the plans and the documentation to the town to move ahead with acquisition. Due to the time frame that we are in, staff feels that it is necessary and would be very helpful to the town attorney's office to go through the right-of-way acquisition process if they had staking along the corridor, so that when they're out there meeting with those property owners that are being impacted, they can easily get a visual reference to what's on a set of engineering drawings, which sometimes is hard for those that aren't looking at those on a daily basis. So $6,700 for a one-time staking along the entire corridor. So staff's recommendation is to approve the supplemental agreement, authorize the town manager to execute agreement number 2 with SEPI in the amount of $9,705. Next steps, this comes to the tight time frame that we were talking about previously. We'll move to immediately finalize the buffer forms that are part of the supplemental agreement to submit later this month, then move towards a 90% plan submittal by the end of July. Town Attorney's Office would continue to work through the right-of-way acquisition process, hopefully being able to wrap up most of that work by the end of this month. Then 100% plans and specifications submittal in August. Then we have to submit everything for the right-of-way acquisition from the town attorney through what they call a right-of-way certification package, which basically goes to the DOT's division right-of-way agent, which usually there's one for Wake County, that's reviewing all of those for all LAP projects being submitted for the year. So we need to get that in as soon as we can. Hopefully they'll be able to approve everything in time for us to submit for our 100% final plan submittal in late August. And then that would probably accompany, based on the 100% final cost estimate, we could finalize our actual LAP request to the DOT in the same month. And then as soon as that gets approved, we would be ready for construction authorization request and approval at the end of the federal fiscal year. Advertisement would be November, December, and then looking to start construction at the early 2020. That concludes the presentation.
Is the same firm doing the environmental document that's doing the designs? Is SEPI doing both the environmental document designs?
Yes.
That question, Elmo.
I asked, was the same firm doing the designs as well as the environmental document, the categorical exclusion?
Y'all ready to take a break?
Well, you're making these recommendations, asking the council to
Sitting in
approve
meat and
those, right?
potatoes now. Tell us, how did we get to this point?
With respect to the timeline?
Yeah, and
the cost?
and
Or both?
how did we miss the scope? Maybe SEPI can answer that better, but how did we miss the scope? Why we
On the buffers?
Well,
The
scope
design,
on
the design scope you're referring to?
materials testing,
The materials testing.
CA, all of that.
Again, most of that initial LAP agreement, that was done in advance of any procurement process with the design. So this was done back in mid-17 by town staff. So they put together a preliminary design and construction cost estimate before a designer was on board. I can't say exactly why certain things were missed since that preceded my time with the town. However, it was a short list of number of line items, like the big ticket items, sidewalk, driveways, mobilization, But there were some areas or some items that were not included in the project estimate that probably should have been.
So what we left out, when the initial cost estimate was no right-of-way acquisition, no utility relocation, no materials testing, and nor was any construction administration.
Correct.
I've got some questions for Seppi. I'll let the others go on with you.
Yeah, we've got Justin Beard from SEPI here to answer questions as well.
Part of this deadline is so tight, and the work the town's got to do, but also the work SEPI's got to do. Can SEPI meet the deadline too? I mean,
That's the question I want him to answer.
I mean, that sounds like we got to have them. If they don't meet the deadline, then we're not going to meet the deadline.
Right. Well, I'm sure Justin come up here and answer, but I think the answer is yes, they can, and town staff's going to do everything we can to assist with that as well.
Justin Beard with SIP Engineering. Do I need to be sworn in? I think. Okay. All right. Just here to support Chris and whatever questions you might have.
$1,000 question, I guess, is he's talking about the urgency of meeting these deadlines, and so obviously it's a team effort, and so I guess the question to you is, do you foresee any obstacles or difficulties that would keep us from meeting those deadlines?
No, not right now. Like we said, we've requested a supplement to take care of the sidewalk going through the loose buffers, which is just a buffer authorization, which they've determined that is required to complete the environmental documents. We spoke with the NCDOT reviewing the representative on the phone recently about another topic, and he, even mentioned that our plans are pretty close to 100% right now. So we made some minor changes this past week based on some recommendations from Chris. We're going through and addressing the final erosion control comments. Once we get all that wrapped up, we should be pretty much done with at least the plans as far as they go. The rest of it is just going through, I guess, the steps that it needs to go through for reviews and putting all the documents together, getting the right-of-way acquisition. So we feel like we're on schedule to make the deadlines that we've set forth so far. So.
History of SEPI was basically founded based on doing a lot of DOT work. This
Correct.
particular type work, wasn't it? So
Correct.
you know them better than some of them know themselves.
Right, yep. Mm-hmm.
Even though Elmo's here. DOT.
Mm-hmm.
When you all first took this project, did any alarms raised? Did you know it was a lap project?
There were, and actually when we put our initial scope and fee together, there was actually a few more items added in. But then we took another look at it again because we know that these sidewalk projects have very limited funding. Like I said, we added some other items in that we've been asked to in the past for other lap funded projects through DOT. They've asked us to include those. But like we said, knowing that there's limited funding and sitting down with Jonathan, we basically shrunk it down to just the bare bones minimum of what we thought would need to be included. And then if we needed to, if there were some as needed items like the environmental, the buffer authorization, we would go back and get those as needed with supplements. As far as, I don't think there were any other real big red flags. We did know that once we did get notice to proceed, that the schedule was tightened and shrunk. So, so we've been doing, what we can to kind of keep up and, do things as quickly as possible.
As a part of the lab process, was SEPI involved with the development of the scope for the project?
The original scope?
Yes. Where did the original scope come from?
I think the original scope was developed by staff.
By our staff.
By our staff. One other thing that Justin just mentioned, the timeline was shrunk. One other thing that has happened, I think there was plenty of opportunities for work to have been done differently in the early parts of this project. But one thing that's different about this LAP project is the federal decision that is going to pull funding back at the end of the next fiscal year is a unique part of this project, because probably if a LAP project were going to go past the timeline, there's a good chance that we could just get an extension on the project, and typically funding is not in jeopardy. We have a unique situation that our project and many other projects that are using certain types of funding as a part of LAP right now, the funds are going to be rescinded if they're not committed at the beginning of the fiscal federal fiscal 20 year. So that's why the September date coming up is so critical. So while there are probably many things that staff, we may not have handled the best going into this, it was unknown at the time that our funding was going to be jeopardized due to a timeline that was not foreseen. So that's a little different in this situation.
When did the feds make that decision?
I can't remember exactly when they made that decision. I think it only became apparent to some of our staff last year that the funding timeline was changing so much.
And it sounds like that SEPI had recommended certain things be put in it, and we said, well, maybe we don't have to do it. We'll see if we can get by without it. And so the scope was reduced, and we signed on with a limited scope of services. But then when we get into it, forget about the services for a minute. So we're going from, we're increasing the cost by 78%. Your estimated cost. Can you give us a thumbnail sketch of why the cost varied so much? Was it, we just had a we had a real low estimate, or can you give us any insight on how to, it's a pretty defined thing. We didn't change the length of the project. So how does the cost go up at 78%?
Right. We're not privy to what the original cost estimate was. We kind of put together like a very preliminary one at the beginning that didn't have any actual quantities associated with it. It was basically just it was based off of like a linear footage based on the length of the project. And that was, I believe that was higher than what the original estimate was. And then there's some other contingencies and percentages that kind of get added on to the end that weren't included in that fee as well. And those can really bump up the total project cost at the end. And I don't believe, maybe, I don't know if those are included in that original estimate as well.
But I've got one other one. This is curiosity. I'm not going to up about it, but I got to ask the question. How do you plan to stake the right of way, and so that people can see what's being requested of their property for temporary construction, that sort of thing?
How do we plan on staking it?
Yeah. Is it a meets and bounds survey, or do you go along and for the back of curb, you know what's on your plans, and you can measure it off with a tape measure, and it's 25.5 feet, and you put down a flag?
They're actually going to be, it's going to be surveyed and staked with actual stakes with flags on them. And the scope is
with
to...
a transit...
Yes, yeah.
Or whatever the right instruments are today.
Yes, yeah. And they're going to stake it pretty much where the construction easement ties into the right-of-way. There'll be a stake, and then wherever it changes direction on that person's property, there'll be another stake. If there's something in the way, like a bush or a tree, you know, they've got some hardscape or landscape on their property, you try to probably add another stake or two just to make sure that you can see one from the next one to the other one without damaging what's out there currently.
So it's not a matter of going along there on the route and being able to measure the linear along the linear route and doing an offset of 15.5 feet 25 feet down, we do it, we measure off again perpendicular, and maybe it's 20 feet, and you keep doing that because it's pretty non-scientific, but a backhoe's not going to, can't get any more accurate than you can measure it with a tape measure. So you're doing it by meets and bounds, and for all of the smaller items that people would be aware of or be concerned about their favorite bush and their favorite tree that grandma planted in the last century and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're actually to be setting up, they've got controls set up out there already from when we initially surveyed the project. So there's going to be going back out there, establishing control, and then again, just like I said, locating, it won't be necessarily meets and bounds, but it'll be locating off of, they'll create a CAD file that's got all the locations they want to locate, and they'll go out there and put stakes in the ground that way.
You told me what I was after.
I'm good.
Are you ready to take a break?
Please, well, we do.
I'd like
Vote.
to resolve it.
Yeah.
What else do we need to talk about
Really,
on this, Chris?
this was just a project update, and we're looking for council's approval for the supplemental agreement. That's the only action that's required at this time.
I don't like the route that we've gotten here. I think we certainly have learned something from this. I hope we have. Be that as it may, this is where we are. I'm not going to nickel and dime somebody over trying to save $2,000 on the front end and put at risk saving us $100,000 on the back end by getting this in time. Can we, do you think this is not weather related, this is just pure manpower and scheduling within your office to get it done? Is that the nuts and bolts of it? Because all the rest of the outside work is done except surveying, and I'm sure, staking it, that's not a difficult, unless it's raining.
Right, yeah.
Oh,
That's what we're here for, that's what we're planning on doing.
You're confident you can get it done? Move to
If I may,
approve.
if I may just add, based on SEPI's reputation, I believe we can have confidence that this will get done the way it's supposed to, and I appreciate Chris's diligence and hard work too. Short time frame, but I think it'll happen.
Second motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
So we'll see you back in summer of '20 for a ribbon cutting or whatever.
All right,
Yes.
look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Justin.
Have
Now,
what you need, Chris?
Yes, are we taking a break, or are we going to the next item? I heard a
we're
break.
trying to
so-
take a break, but we've been doing that for 30 minutes.
We do need to take a break. Yeah, we could.
Let me know what you would
Are
like.
y'all ready to take a break? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? 10?
10 minutes.
All right, we'll
Oh,
set.
heck, let's take 30 or 40.
Yeah.
We added to the agenda, Mr. Mayor, Rec Center field update, and
Right, we got that.
Mr. Johnson's going to give that report.
All right. So yeah, we've got, this is for the Garner Recreation Center again. This is in regards not to the prime contract with Pro Construction, who's doing the facility work, but it's related to the landscape contract that is currently being done by Tony Norris Landscaping. So just a brief background, landscape contract was initially bid in conjunction with the building site work, but then later it was removed and rebid separately in an effort to try to utilize some grant funding. The landscape contract was awarded to Tony Norris Landscape in the amount of $355,700. The original breakdown, it included landscaping at both the Recreation Center site as well as the Garner Performing Arts Center. It included irrigation at the playfield at the rec site. It also included concrete work for the walking track that goes around the playfield. And it also included an ad alternate that was part of the bid for sodding along the west side of the Recreation Center. This is along the Montague side between Montague Street and the building. Just another note, the playfield was originally in the contract to be seeded with Bermuda grass. And although irrigation was included in the price, no haul-in of topsoil or compost of any kind was part of the contract. The contract was set up to utilize leftover topsoil and native topsoil on the site, not hauling it in. And that was something that was brought up during the bid process by the contractors. Those questions were answered. I'm just letting you know that's how the contract was set up. So staff has worked with the contractor. There was a lack of topsoil on the site. There were some spoil areas that were out there last year, but most of that was not a lot of topsoil material. It was mostly clay soils. There is concern that with the amount of activity that the play field is going to have, it's going to be hard to grow grass from seed that will be able to flourish in the short term. So staff has went back and obtained quotes for a supplemental or change order. We looked at a couple different options. We originally looked at sod, but it was quite expensive. Tony Norris actually came back and suggested the possible use of sprigs, which he said with the type of grass, Bermuda grass being a crawling type of vegetation as opposed to fescue, that sprigs would flourish very quickly, and that they felt that if they were given, they could give a much better competitive price for sprigging, and then have time in there for watering, fertilizations, weed control for like 2 months, and that they would be able to get it in turf type condition by the fall. So the other item that was added, there's an existing slope. This is actually the same area that I was talking about that had sod in the original contract. This is a shot of the, I guess, southwest corner of the building facade, right up against Montague Street to your left side. The area highlighted in pink is today, if you've been out there, it is a very steep slope. Too steep for being able to safely mow it, and we feel that trying to sod that and maintain it over time is probably not going to be in the town's best interest. So we approached the landscaper about possibly other alternatives. They've come back and they've recommended stabilizing that slope with plantings, shrub plantings, and mulch. So we're looking to basically remove that portion of the sod and replace it with planting and mulch. So the change order breakdown as submitted was to landscape the hill. This has included 620 plants. They're calling out 4-inch Liriopes baccata, which we've thrown over to our Public Works Department for review and approval. Includes mulch as well as watering over a time period of 3 weeks. It also $96.50 for installing the Bermuda grass sprigs around the inside of the playfield. That's basically everything inside the concrete walking trail. And then for the playfield to have 60 days of turf maintenance, which they provided 4 fertilizations, 2 applications of weed control, and 6 mowings throughout that time to keep the vegetation aggressively trying to grow. And then they've provided a small deduction for the small area of sod that is no longer necessary in that same area for the landscaping. So that would bring the total combined change order to $19,122. The staff's recommendation is to approve the additional work for the playfield and landscaping steep hill and authorize the town manager to execute a change order with Norris Landscaping in amount not to exceed $19,122.
Back up 2 slides. So when they do the turf maintenance on the meadow, are they gonna have it staked off so people won't walk on it while they're doing all this, or have the fencing or whatever around it? I mean, is it gonna be protected? I mean, we're gonna spend this kind of money. You know, I don't leave a meadow out there when somebody decide they want to go out there and play on it and tear it up.
I would say that the quote does not include any kind of tree protection fencing or fencing. That would be something that would probably be considered additional by the landscaper.
Mr. Singleton, the window for doing the sprigging of this type grass is coming to a pretty quick close. That's one reason this is coming to you so quickly tonight. So this would be installed within the month. And so the 60-day period a portion of that is while the site and other things will still be getting completed. So we don't expect to have folks on the site for at least the first part of that
Till it's
period.
stabilized, right?
So that lets us know that corrections are not going to open up for another 60 to 90 days at the minimum, so that answers that question. I don't even need to follow up with. I just want to make sure it's protected. We're going to spend this kind of effort to put the sprigs in and water it, which it would definitely need to be watered. I mean, as we all know, Bermuda, or Austin, there's wiregrass and growing that floor out there if we give it just enough topsoil underneath it, enough dirt underneath it. So
The only amount of work left in the playfield right now is for them to finish one small section left of the concrete walking trail, which is along the main entrance line. That was sort of, the last few weeks have been, they would have finished it already, but they had a lot of brick pavers out there because they're finishing up the brick entrance. As soon as those get moved out of the way, they'll finish the walking trail, and then there wouldn't be really any more work necessary inside the playfield.
All right.
Okay, your motion, what do you need?
Question. Got any idea how dense the streets will be? I'm talking about how far apart they are.
Off the top of my head, I do not.
Okay. The real thing is, in 60 days, is that realistic to think that we can, and I'm going to vote for it, period. I think that the other thing is our expectations, we put it out there and it's going to be ready for use in 60 days. I don't think that's realistic. I think, quite frankly, we need to protect it until next year.
Right.
And so we need to put just some type, we're not going to keep, anybody who wants to go out there, they're going to go, no matter how big the fence is. But some type of temporary fencing just to minimize the abuse to it. Second thing, we've already got some irrigation piping. It looks like there's irrigation piping that's been installed in that area. Now that they're going to go back and till in stuff, are we going to tear up what's already been done there?
That has not been raised as an issue by the landscape contractor who was responsible for the irrigation. So this was an idea that was brought to us by himself, and he's not raised any concerns about the irrigation.
What you see come up out of the ground, Mr. Kennedy, are flexible leads coming off of the piping, and we had a specific discussion with him about were they deep enough that he could do this work without interfering with those. And he feels like that while they may have a little bit of work to do right at each one, those are not a rigid line coming up.
Well, yeah, I'm not worried about the flexibility. I'm thinking that we tear them up and we got to put another splice in it, and then we've just got that many more joints. But I'm for having instead of a weed field, there's one thing about it, Bermuda will choke out anything else out there, even including zoysia.
Right. And as far as the establishment period question you asked, I mean, I've not personally had a lot of experience with sprigging, but we did have a lot of back and forth discussions with Tony about this, and he seemed pretty confident that sprigging with this type of Bermuda doesn't take that long to get established. So he felt confident, being he's more of the expert than myself in this particular area.
If you keep it watered, and we've got plenty of heat right now, once it gets established, it will be fine.
And we consulted with our turf kind of management, well, professional, I guess you say, Derek, with Public Works, who knows a lot about turf field and those type of things, and we got his opinion on it.
I just think we move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Are you ready for committee reports?
Yes, sir.
Hey, you want to go first?
We haven't got any committee reports to report anything.
No committee reports at this time.
Manager, what you got?
Garner info in your packet here. Also, as you know, July 3rd is coming up in a couple of days. Gates open at 5 p.m., I believe. And council, you got some instructions on where to be at a certain time for introductions. And we're looking forward to a good night of music and fireworks. It is going to be a bit toasty, especially at the beginning, but we've had those conditions before, and it turns out to be a nice night, so hopefully that'll be the case this year. And then the last thing I'm going to do is turn it over to Mr. Hodges. I know we've had some emails circulate about the power on the project on Aversboro, and he just wanted to give the council an update on some of the conditions out there.
So I believe over the last week, council, or at least members of council, if not everyone, has received 2 different communications regarding the project at Aversboro and Minglewood. One of the first ones was a question or concern about the sidewalk being closed. And the other emails have been about power outages that occurred last week during development. We did talk to Royal Oaks Building Group today, and we have discussed the sidewalk closure. That is closed for now because the construction entrance that was approved as a part of that project was for site development, heavy construction equipment to come from Aversboro and cross that area of riprap that you see out there, the rock that you see there. So that was it was a known situation when the project was approved. It might have consequences that go beyond what was envisioned at the time, but it was a known situation. The developer is going to just check and see if there is anything else they can do, but they do feel like that the site work would be done probably by about November or December of this year. And at that point, that would be taken out, the sidewalk would be reopened, and then all of the regular building construction traffic will come in off of Minglewood. But the condition of heavy traffic for site development, again, was coming off of Aversboro, and that was a condition that was asked for and approved at the time of the project approval. The second part about power outages, for anyone not familiar with it, there was a power outage on Monday and a power outage last Friday, both of which affected some additional surrounding neighborhoods. I know it affected at least parts, if not all, of Heather Woods neighborhood, as well as Village at Aversboro. I did talk to the developer today. They were made aware of a situation of an employee of that was one of the operators there that had made apparently at least one or more bad judgments and misunderstanding some parameters of the project, and the person no longer is on the job, and I think no longer works for the company who is doing the grading work. So that we hope that is rectified. Today, when the power outage began, the more widespread power outage that I believe Mr. Singleton was able to confirm was not related to originating at this part. We were afraid that even though it was more widespread, it could have originated there. The phones here at Town Hall started ringing a lot because folks were assuming that it was a third occurrence of the development, and we're glad to know that it's not that, and we will continue working with that developer. As you may remember, they worked very closely with a lot of the surrounding neighbors, including the folks that live in the Village at Aversboro, on that project, and we're going to try to help shepherd any of the concerns they had through. It's one of the first infill development projects in quite such a highly populated area that we've had in a while, so we will keep monitoring the progress that's going on there. If there's any questions you have tonight or anything that you'd want staff to follow up directly with any citizens who've contacted you, please let me know and we'll be glad to reach out to them.
One's today, the one that the first at 420 was an equipment failure off the Rand Mills feeder, and the second was something they think with the substation, because that was over 10,000 customers. That was not somebody who knocked down a line on the logging company. So, and again, with all, you've got people, a lot of people taking off, you've got more people at home, you got people using air conditioners, they're maxing out, and it's only going to get hotter. You're going to see this, I wouldn't be surprised to see some more of this, not just in Garner, but in the area. With the state, with this heat, you're going to see some more of these power, you're going to see some more equipment failures. It's just the way it is. Today was not, yes, they did make some screw ups last week, but the ones today were not that. And y'all can confirm that with calling Mr. Clayton's Progress Center, Duke Energy, and he can confirm all that.
Mr. Attorney.
I have just one more item. Candidacy filing starts Friday on July the 5th and runs through Friday, July the 19th. And anyone interested would file at the Wake County Board of Elections. And note that their location has changed. It's now on New Hope Road.
Is that all, Rodney?
That's it.
Mr. Attorney, you have anything?
No, sir.
Council, let's talk with Mr. Kennedy.
Already noticed on several occasions that trucks are being parked at the Drury Motel Hotel site. Is there any way that we can keep those trucks off of there? Some of them are box trucks, some are transfer trucks. Looks like they might even have a sleeper unit in it. and I know they're not supposed to be there. Have we got any authority to literally have them removed immediately, and it's just so inconsistent with what's intended out there. It's an eyesore.
There's a notice process, and typically, Mr. Griner and others have had pretty good response, and the notices being adhered to pretty quickly. So we've had good success in other parts of town. We'll get them started on that. I'm sorry?
Can we put up signs?
That's private property, so that would, I would strongly encourage the private property owners to put up any signage. And if they don't do that, the signage would help in our enforcement efforts. We had to actually have Wake County Schools erect signage for us to be able to then go out and enforce. So I would suggest that the private property owners put up signage that would aid in our enforcement efforts.
We do that? Can we ask them to do that?
Yes, sir.
Number two, there's been 2 or 3 cuts on some, at least on Aversboro and Vandora, that one's down close to the pool on Aversboro, another one's on Vandora, where a new house is being constructed, and immediately those cuts were, you could tell that you'd gone over a cut. They need some attention. This one is, I'm not sure how we can handle it, but I'll throw it out there for some discussion. Does a fellow that pretty well keeps up with all of the relevant activities that happen at the Bella Rose rehabilitation area, and it's not uncommon to have emergency calls, to have folks come out there, and different drivers depending upon which shift it is and what station is responding. There have been times when the people said that it took them an extra 10 minutes or whatever to find the entrance. They couldn't find Bella Rose.
Well, can I jump in a minute? I've scheduled twice with Jeff, representatives from that firm, and they won't show up in their meeting. I guess I'll show up again.
And we've discussed alternatives that would allow them to have a sign at the road, and I don't know if they've made an
They worked
effort.
the full council by now, they still don't think they've had any response, but.
Now, this was Randall bringing it up, and not an owner, and I told him, I said, we talked about signage from the day that the site plan came in, and tried to give them advice on how to handle it before the first shovel full of dirt was moved. And but at the same time, the folks that live there, I can't imagine that the owners would not respond. I can't imagine that we wouldn't try to help them in any way we could to make sure somebody got there and responded.
There was a tree across the driveway last week from the storm, and I got up before. That was on private property too, but for the sake of the ambulance making it to the hospital, rest home, they got it moved.
The other question, I know I think somebody said in the recent past that we're going to have a GIS demonstration at a work session. Is that still in the works?
Yes,
It
sir.
is, but I don't think we've made any definite.
We have not, and with Mr. Patel's departure, that just had set us back a little bit from being able to bring that in.
Okay. I may come back to one, but that's all I've got for right now.
The only thing I have is, I want to thank John for his quick response, at least to me, in regards to the outage, since I had responded to at least one citizen who had a concern about that. And so thank you, John, for your follow-up and for the further information we received here tonight. Otherwise, I don't have anything to report.
Didn't you spend a week with your grandchildren?
Oh, I did, yeah, well, you're right, yeah.
All right.
I'll tell you about that after the meeting.
All right. I met with the Downtown Garner Association last week at their regular monthly meeting, and all of the storefronts, all the available businesses are filled. First time ever. It's just amazing what they've done in the past 20 years, but most particularly pretty down there, and they're working hard, and there's a sense of community that is just gratifying. So I commend them for the work they're doing.
So I've noticed they've continued to work on the bridge project over 70, and which is, I guess, a positive. I just want to know if, from the staff, if the plans for the last time we met, the plans for the study of Jones Sausage Road were being signed. But now I just want to know if the contracts have been executed.
So the contract has now been executed, and the notice to proceed was actually previously given, and the contractor's already started doing some work, but the actual contract has been signed.
I do have one more question. I'm sorry. I've understood that when the work began on the bridge on Highway 50, that the 3 properties sort of down the hill there would be removed. But I noticed today the little gray house on the corner, access onto 70 is also being torn down.
Yes.
Is that part of the original plan, or was it added on?
Yes, that was part of it.
Okay, I don't remember that, so.
I want to share with y'all the power of technology. My oldest son lives in what is referred to as Washington State. He's watching right now. Hey, Stephen, he watches us way the hell out there on the other coast. So y'all stay within your, Hey, Stephen.
I heard him respond. The only one on here that needs hearing aids.
But Buck, and some of you may have been approached, that Vietnam Wall, are you familiar with it? The moving wall?
Yes.
Tim Stevens is organizing an effort to bring that wall to Garner, and it's going to be about $11,000, so they'll be soliciting some. Buck, did you want to add anything?
They'll be soliciting donations from businesses and individuals and so forth, yes, yeah. He's talked with me and probably talked to everybody about it, so yes, I look forward to it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the community responds, and I think we just need to keep up with Tim. I think that's the kind of thing that it's not something that's going to happen immediately. It takes, you have to stand in line, and the queue is 2 years long. So, but you gotta have a commitment. You gotta, they have to know that you got the funding, et cetera. That
They'll take a pledge too.
maybe it's good. I think we need to follow what that fundraising effort is and be ready on standby to be able to assist it down the road if that's in order to make that happen.
I don't do this often, but through Buck, I've given a goodly sum to the Y. I've donated $1,000 on this wall because I'm part of what's on that wall. So, if you have a chance to contribute, please do.
Mr. Mayor, move we adjourn.
Second.
Made the second, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.